Aims to reach net zero emissions by 2070 and to meet half of its electricity requirements from renewable sources by the end of this decade. For more on these ambitious plans, we're joined exclusively by Sumant Sinha, founder, chairman and CEO of renewable energy generator ReNew. The question is how, Sumant? How do you get there?
I think we get there by three very significant policy decisions that this government has taken. Number one is that, as you know, India's power demand is growing quite significantly at 6 to 7% a year or more as the basic economy grows at 7 to 8%. And I think the big policy decision is that most of this extra demand will be met from renewable energy capacity. And there's a good reason for that. Not only is it better for the environment, but it's also cheaper than coal-based power. And so therefore, by pushing renewables as the first port of call for new capacity addition, and that's one big policy decision that the government has taken. And then secondly, now we've seen action on the ground. We've seen that the government is now beginning to auction off almost 50 to 60 gigawatts of new renewable energy capacity every year, which we'll start seeing that getting built out over the next couple of years. The third thing is that the government is really very actively building out the grid transmission network to make sure that all of this power that is generated in different parts of the country can be moved to other parts of the country as well, so that there aren't any bottlenecks in that regard. And I think on the fourth front, through this competitive bidding process, there is a lot of transparency because central government agencies are involved in buying the power from us. The credit quality of the offtake is very good. And that actually is able to drive large amounts of new capital, both debt and equity, into the country to make this happen. So it's actually a very attractive sector. And that is what is getting more and more people to come in to make these investments to essentially meet the target of net zero by 2070, as India's put it.
Right. The thing is, Sumant, we have both ministries now split, right? Power as well as renewables. Is that necessarily better?
No, that's a good question. I think that having had one minister in the past for both power and renewables is actually quite helpful. I think in this case, of course, we'll have to have good coordination between the ministries, and I'm sure that will be the case. We also have a common Minister of State, a junior minister, that is going to be common between the Ministry of Power and the Ministry of Renewable Energy. And then, of course, keep in mind that ultimately the Prime Minister's office will also be involved. The policy-making body, Niti Aayog, is also going to be involved. So I think all of that will ensure that there is commonality of policies and continuity of policies across both the ministries, as we had earlier as well.
Capacity building has been delayed for several reasons. Will that be addressed anytime soon, you think?
No, I think that it certainly will be, because till last year, till 2 years ago, we were auctioning off only about 15 to 17 gigawatts of new capacity. And so with the time lag, we actually had that much new capacity getting added. Last year, we auctioned 60 gigawatts. And this year, the intention is to auction another 50 gigawatts. So with a 1 or 2 year lag, you will start seeing all of these new capacities that have been auctioned beginning to get commissioned. So I would say, let's be patient. You'll probably see a pretty significant step up from last year to this year, and from this year to next year. And that will then put us on a trajectory to get to 500 gigawatts by 2030.
Sumant, energy storage is important. In fact, it's key, it's critical. What are you doing about it?
So, you know, more and more, Haslinda, what is happening is that we are having bids that are not plain vanilla wind or solar bids any longer, where we just put the power into the grid and let the grid manage it. Now, more and more, the auctions and the structures that are happening are what we call round-the-clock power projects, where we have to combine wind, solar, and storage together and give much more managed generation profiles to the grid, so that the grid is more easily able to absorb them. This could allow us to deliver 100% generation at the peak times in the morning and in the evening, or across the full month of the year. Now, those projects that we are bidding on, and by the last year, almost 40% of the bids were for these more complex auctions. ReNew, in fact, won a quarter of those bids. And in those bids, we require a lot of storage. And so, therefore, we as a company will be setting up almost 1.5 gigawatt hours of battery-based storage over the next 3 years as part of some of these bids. So they're not standalone, but they're integrated into the wind and solar parks that we are setting up right now. So I think in that sense, the government is being quite prudent about how they're slowly increasing the amount of storage in some of these auctions that we are now seeing. And that will then, I think, ramp up. And I think in the future, what you'll also start seeing is standalone bids for grid storage as well. And I think that will that will essentially meet the grid's requirement for that extra storage that we'll require to shift some of the daytime to the evening.
Right. ReNew has talked about projects that will take it through to 2030. Where are you with that?
So we are actually quite well advanced, Haslinda, on that, because we've finished, as you know, 10 gigawatts of total installed capacity, of which roughly half is wind and half is solar. We have a pipeline of another about 12 gigawatts more, of which half the PPAs are already signed, and the other half are things that we won in various auctions that we've got letter of awards for, and we're waiting for the PPAs to get done. We've got connectivity, transmission connectivity for all of this capacity, and we're fairly far advanced in executing the capacity that we're going to be putting up in the next couple of years. And so you will see a fairly consistent capacity addition from us as we look to execute against the 12 gigawatts of capacity that we have in the pipeline right now. And I think over the next 4 or 5 years at max, you'll see us completing all of this capacity. So we're fairly far advanced. The equipment is more or less there. You know, we've got into our own solar manufacturing plant. And so therefore, all of that is dedicated capacity that is coming to us. On wind turbines, we've got also good equipment supply agreements already in place for all of this capacity. So I think we're in good shape to get this capacity done. And on the capital side, frankly, debt capital is not a problem for us. Our rates have not increased at all from earlier rates, before COVID. And so we have a lot of good partnerships with a lot of debt financing companies. So we don't see any issues on the debt financing side. And on the equity side, most of it is going to be met by internal cash flow accruals and some amount of asset sales that we'll do over this time period.
Sumant, we know that China has created a glut in solar panels. Is that making your procurement cheaper? Is that benefiting you in any way?
It certainly is, because, you know, we are buying cells from China. Now, you would know that in India, we are not allowed to import Chinese modules any longer because the government has put a restriction on that. So all modules have to be made in India, but the cells we're able to buy from China, and of course the wafers for our cell plants. So to the extent that wafer and cell prices also have come down substantially, to that extent we're actually benefited quite significantly from the decline in solar capex. And that's actually something that we'll be able to show in terms of lower capex per megawatt for solar going forward.